Glenn. And about this time of year, I know that everybody is trying to make decisions and prioritize what they're going to be working on for the new year. And I thought I would show you an interesting little calculation that I do to choose between competing alternatives, because if you are an entrepreneur, as you develop your skills and abilities and network, you'll find you are constantly awash in new opportunities, and it's very difficult to decide. So this is something called the weighted mean of importance technique, and I didn't invent it. It's kind of an offshoot of decision-making theory. And what you do is you list out the projects or choices that you might be considering. So here I've got 5 spaces for projects here. So let's say project 1 might be, I don't know, let's call it migraine supplements, right? So let's say that's project number 1. Okay, let's make this a little smaller. So project number 1 would be to work on the migraine supplement company. Project number 2 might be to work on a personal development blog. Project number 3 could be to, for me to work on the entrepreneurial education. Project number 4 would be, everybody knows I'm working on emotional eating, right? And project number 5 might be what can I talk? Let's talk about my alpaca company here for a minute. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to allocate my time for the year, and I'm looking at these 5 different possibilities. And then the other thing to consider is, well, what are the criteria against which I will evaluate these projects? So maybe factor number 1 is estimated profit in 2010. Maybe factor 2 is long-term profit. Okay, factor number 3 is fun. How much do I really want to do it? Factor number 4 is free of landmines. Are there legal hassles? Are there possible ethical concerns? Do I have any difficulties with partners, that kind of thing? And then factor number 5 would be, let's say, is it socially valuable? Something's kind of important to me. And you can do this with many more than 5 factors and many more than 5 projects, or fewer than 5 factors and 5 projects. I just thought I'd illustrate like this, and I'll give you a copy of the spreadsheet. It's not hard to make changes in the formulas if you want to add or subtract. And then what you do is you rate each one of the projects on each one of the factors. And these are fairly random ratings that I've put in, but I would rate it with 10 being high and 1 being low on a scale of 1 to 10. How likely do I think that I'm going to make significant profit in 2010 from these projects? So that's how I would rate those. That's not actually how I would rate them, but those are for the sake of not making you watch me rate every single one, what I put in there. Then you do the same thing for long-term profits on each of the projects. I think you see where I'm going. So it kind of forces you to think through what's important to you. And in this scenario, what's important to me is making more profit this year, having potential for long-term profit, having fun, having something that's free of landmines and ethical conflicts, and having something that's socially valuable. And then the last thing you do is you assign the importance level on 1 to 10. And that's really the critical part of the equation, because not all of these factors are equally important. So let's say that it's particularly important to me to bring in more income in 2010. So I'm going to make that a 9. Long-term profit is important, not quite as important. Probably everything that I do should have a high fun factor, but let's, for the sake of creating some differential here, let's make that a 6. No, you know what? Let's make that a 10. Everything should be fun. Free of landmines, well, I really don't take on any projects that have too many landmines, so that's not going to be critically important. Let's leave that as a 5. And socially valuable, let's make that a 7. Okay. This number over here is just part of the calculations. You don't really have to understand it. It's just the sum of all the weights, and that's part of how we come to these numbers over here. And let me make these numbers a little simpler. Okay. And then what the spreadsheet does is very simply, it evaluates migraine supplements across all of this, but instead of just taking an average, it takes an average proportional to the level of importance that you've assigned, so that the score that you give migraine supplements for fun, since you said fun was most important, is going to be twice as important as the score you gave it for landmines, because you put landmines down at a 5. And you could bring this all the way down to a 1, and then everything becomes relative. Let's leave that at a 5. And in the end, when that's all done, you can just sort this by that column H. And what you would find is that the top choices point to the top. And I find this relieving on two fronts. I find this very valuable on two fronts. First of all, decision-making is rarely as black and white as we'd like to think that it is. There's usually many factors to consider. And because of all those factors, sometimes I have this chronic sense of ambivalence about, should I do this project or that project? And it prevents me from fully committing to where I need to commit. And so going through this, I can, first of all, kind of have some empathy for myself and say, okay, well, now I've thoroughly evaluated it on all of the things I said are important to me. And I can see that, well, there are two projects that are really very close together, and it makes sense that I'm feeling ambivalent. But what I'll normally, there'll almost always be a surprise when I do this. There'll almost always be a surprise when I go through this. And I won't expect one of the projects to drop out so low as it dropped out. I won't expect one to come up as high as it came out. And it makes the decision going forward easier, and it also reinforces my commitment to spending an appropriate number of hours per week on each project. So in this case, if this were the case, I probably would allocate most of my time to these first two projects, and then kind of have these as lower lying priorities, or maybe I would drop one of them altogether. And you can do this for time allocation. You can do it for yes/no choices. You can do it for things as simple as which restaurant to go to. It's not only a business decision-making tool, but this weighted mean formula I found to be a really valuable tool in my life whenever you kind of get that agitated feeling like, oh my God, I just don't know which way to go. So I'm going to leave this spreadsheet for you. Hope that it works for you. And Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you for your continued loyalty and time and attention. And let's all make this a better year together, okay? Thanks.